Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. How are you? How was the weekend? Not bad? I didn't get you. As usual. Boring? Why? It's not boring. So have you had some time like to read poetry, to analyze poetry, to write response? Come on. This is all I'm asking, you know. But okay. Yes? Did you have time to write reports? To write a response? Okay. Who's willing to write or to read her report? Yes, please. Come. Is it the first time you read? Okay, good. She's a first timer, huh? Okay.
Our goals are set, there is no rest. Our dreams will become true, we have to know. We have our duty, we shouldn't keep our minds empty. Don't say, well, I will say this and that. Just think with your mate. Arrange your notebooks and put your books. Poetry is there to look and stare. Draw your own picture, but be aware of the new culture.
Thank you very much. This is, you know, I mean, she's admonishing herself, and she's admonishing others. Like, yes, they should, you know, organize themselves, because poetry, yes, I do agree with you, poetry is very demanding, and it requires, like, a lot of work. I don't want to take this as a complaint, but if you want to complain, okay, yeah, you know, like writing a report is not an issue, but writing a response, reading the poem is very interesting. Okay, any other creative report? Let me use, you know, choose randomly, and then we get. Okay, yes? Yeah.
Being a critic is a wonderful topic. How it is amazing to become a critic. It was the main concern of our previous lecture. We criticized the poem from many areas according to our culture. That lecture was full of thinking and activation. The teacher said you should activate your mind and give more analyzation. That poem gave me the hope again.
Analysis, yeah?
Yes.
Yes.
Because it seems to be interesting, so I will never feel in pain. Fortunately, I said my daily report 3 times and I become happy. So the teacher surprised me and said, so you are lucky. The kind teacher asked many questions and the students answered in a fresh minds. Then he thanked them and said, you are good with active minds. Finally, our teacher ordered us to prepare Edmund Spenser to his lot. So we become hesitant either to share or that was enough.
Okay, thank you very much. You know what attracts my attention here, like, yeah, you can clap for her. What attracts my attention here is like the willingness of many students to write their report in poetic form. However, you know, I want like most of you to use the narrative, to use the dramatic, to vary it, you know, because poetry is good, but it takes time, honestly. So if you write one in the whole semester or 2, it would be good, but not all the time. Now I need like a narrative. I need you to jot some of your observations, and you know, perhaps to analyze what has been done or what has been said, and then to give a judgment, you know. Of course, you have the right to complain, you have the right to criticize. We are ready, we are open to any criticism, you know, don't worry. Like if you have something you say, I don't understand, like I want this to be different, this is your right, okay? Good. So I think it's time like to have another go. Yes, last time, I think, we went through the poem, we went through your initial responses to the poem, and I think, you know, we read, or we try like to read the poem from an Islamic perspective, and that was, you know, good. Today we are going to conduct, you know, more, yes. Today we are conducting more meticulous, I mean careful analysis of, the poem. We're going to look at the aesthetics. We're going to look at, the rhyme and the rhythm. So today we're going to behave more like a critic. I think last time all of you, thought that the poet was sincere because he was trying to immortalize, the name and the memory of his wife. In fact, it's not a beloved here, it is a wife. And most of us were very sympathetic with the poem because he was frustrated. He was frustrated. However, like all of us, were very happy when we found that the poem or the poet found out, a way, or find a way out of that dilemma by deciding to write or to immortalize her name in his poetry. And in fact here, as we said last time, he is achieving two things. He is, paying tribute to her by immortalizing her name in heaven, because the assumption that was poetry was divine, it was inspired, and at the same time, he is immortalizing his poetry. Okay, I don't have the poem. The LCD is, needs some time to work. So, one day I wrote her name. You can look. One day I wrote her name upon the strand, but came the waves and washed it away. Okay. Let's see. One day I wrote her name upon the strand, but came the waves and washed it away. Okay. Now here, it seems like he is in a struggle. The poet is struggling, isn't he?
Yes.
With whom? With the waves. So the poet's attempt are foiled by, the restless waves. So waves here are personified. They are like a person, you see. One day I wrote her name upon the strand, but came the waves and washed it away. So here, like the image which is enacted here, it is enacted by, the personification itself. So we have an image of somebody who was like trying to write on the sand, to write the name of his wife, and then suddenly the waves was like challenging him, see, and wash it away. So the waves here were introduced like a person who was challenging, contesting the poet's attempt. So this is a personification, and washed it away. Like wash, the word wash, splash. What is this? Onomatopoeia. Whoosh. Like it's onomatopoeia to show how, like he was, challenging. So it suggests, again, I wrote it with a second hand. And even look at the shape of the lines. Even though they are written in, the poem is written in, iambic pentameter, but still the lines are, or imitate to some extent like the shape or the form of the waves. Very interesting, huh? But came the waves and washed it away. Again I wrote it with a second hand, but came the tide and made my pains his prey. Yeah, the tide. What is the tide? Huh? Yeah, tide. Again, it is the sea itself. The sea, the waves. Yeah, but here, no, it is a metaphor. Tide is like what? Like a beast. A beast which is preying. Like, what is preying? What is the beast? What is this beast preying on? And but came the tide and made my pains his prey. So tide, which is the waves, the sea, was like, a wild animal which was preying on the pain of. So yes, again we have a double metaphor here, because the pain, the efforts, of the poet were like a prey, So he was, this wild animal was preying on the pain of the poet. So I think, all of these metaphors, make us win our sympathy and perhaps share the poet his experience. We share him the same frustration, don't we? When you try to do like this and then something is challenging you, do you feel like sympathy for the poet? Yeah, or not? Okay, yes. So if yes, if this is, perhaps a distinctive feature of lyrical poetry, because lyrical poetry, great lyrical poetry is the poetry which allows, this self-identification. So great lyrical poetry, even though it recounts a personal experience, but, it is still like leaves some space for us to identify with the poet. You see what I mean? This is like great poetry. Yeah, it is personal experience. However, like it gives some space to identify. We feel that we are part of the experience, don't we? Good. So this is a distinctive feature of lyrical poetry. Good. I'm doing it line by line, but I think, when we conduct written analysis, we have to see, the whole picture. But here we are going line by line in order to see, to explore the aesthetics of this lovely sonnet. Is it lovely? Okay, you have to say why it is lovely. A bit like all of you read it aloud. Huh? We said last time. You read it aloud or not? And how did it turn out to be? Very fascinating, yeah? One day I wrote her name upon the strand, but came the waves and washed it away. Again I wrote it with a second hand, but came the tide and made my pains his prey. Very sad. Even the rhyme, the choice of the words. A pain. Look at the vowels. Away. It's like somebody who is sighing, complaining. So the rhyme, the choice of the rhyming words are full of vowels. Yes. But came the tide again, you said time, because in the Elizabethan time, and this is like an example of a pun, because tide meant the sea itself, it was a metonymy of the sea, and at the same time, it is a pun, which it meant time. Time in the Elizabethan, in the Elizabethan period, was viewed as a restless, a wild, fierce animal. We're going to see this in many of Shakespeare's sonnets, how they challenged the time. And they thought that time was interchangeable with death. So time was an end to every, glorious dream. Time was an end to every happy and joyful thing. So, they were concerned about time, and they wanted to find a way how to challenge that time. Of course, now for us as Muslims, we don't have this worry at all. We don't have this worry because we have a clear image of the life thereafter. Good. Now, as we said, the lady was watching him, and when she found out that he was doing this, she just jumped and said, "Vain man," said she, "that does in vain essay." Essay, like try. And this is a French, verb. English language is full of French words. Like English language, because we're talking about like 3 centuries of, French culture, French language. We remember, I think you studied at some point how William the Conqueror, England was occupied, when it was tribes by the French for 3 centuries, and English became the same language. But here, like the English, when they are using, like some French words, they are decorating, ornamenting. They are showing how they are, erudite, how they are, what's mean erudite? Highly educated. See? Yeah, pedantic. They are not pedantic, but they want to show erudite. The paradox is, like the French, do not want to show off by speaking English. See, this is the paradox. In England, it is like, it's a good thing that you know French. It's a kind of, civilization. It's the kind of etiquette. But in French, in France, it's the opposite. See what I mean? I don't know. Good. Vain man, said she, that thus in vain essay, a mortal thing, so to immortalize. So here, the lady, it's the first time we hear the voice of the lady. A vain man, said she, that thus in vain essay, a mortal thing, so to immortalize. For I myself shall like to this decay, and eke my name be wiped out likewise. So it is something which is disencouraging for the poet, vain man. And again here, vain man will find that later, the whole poem is written in iambic pentameter. And this is the only spondee in the poem. Most of the poem is written in iambic. One day I wrote her name upon the strand. It goes like this, iambic pentameter, but this is the only spondee. Sorry. This is the only spondee. It is double stressed. Vain man. Vain man. She was trying to underestimate his efforts. Vain man. She wanted to stress her assumption. Yeah, that what you are doing is useless. Vain man, said she, that thus in vain assay. Like the word vain, it has to do, it is associated with, uselessness. It is associated with futility. What's futility? Futility, like uselessness. Vain man should see that thus in vain essay, a mortal thing, so to immortalize. You're trying, to immortalize a mortal thing. Now, a mortal thing, she's referring what? It's a metonymy. It's a metonymy of the body itself. And the body, in the Elizabethan time, the body was seen as something, inferior, which is liable to decay. A mortal thing, so to immortalize. For I myself shall like to this decay, and eke my name be wiped out likewise. So the name is like something written, and like it, the waves are like a teacher who wipes out the board once he's done. It's very dramatic. I mean, here, having the voice of the, the lady, adds another, another trajectory to the poem, because it starts with dramatic, with the narrative, and now it's getting more dramatic. Now, of course, the poet who was trying to write was not convinced with what she said. So, not so, not so, not so, quote I. Now it's challenge. Not so, quote I. Quote I, it's like, let Bezer things devise. Like Bezer, he's talking about the body. The body was seen, again, this is Bezer, like the body, what is connected to the body was seen in the Elizabethan time as something base, which is liable to decay. Let Bezer things die, to die in dust. But you shall live by faith. So fame here, is like, a patron, like something. Yeah, it's something. We have a metaphor here. Fame, like, is something which secures, the existence of life. To die in dust, but you shall live by fame. My verse, your virtues rare shall eternize. Wow. My verse, your virtues rare. My verse. Look at the fricatives here. My verse, your virtues. Because here he is assertive. So the alliteration here, like, has to do with the attitude of the poet, which is very assertive. Now he is challenging. My verse, your virtues rare shall eternize. I know, like, your virtues, like, it should be your rare virtues. But the poet here, reverses the order. And this is, perhaps he was doing this after Chaucer. And later, this is going to be a poetic diction. Like when you use the adjective like Arabic after it's part of the poetic diction, it was a poetic practices. We're going to see it later when we discuss the neoclassical, because they thought that poetry should adhere to the norms of the poetic diction. So to die in dust, but you shall live by fame. My verse, your virtues rare shall eternize. Shall. What is shall? Like, shall is a modern verb, but what do we use shall for? Like, look at the syntax here. We use shall for what? For promises. Shall. So he's vowing. He is pledging. You know what's mean pledge? To pledge, to vow. So pledge. He's vowing. He's vowing that, her poetry shall eternize. Her poetry, is going to preserve, or let's say to conserve, because conserve is on a longer term, to conserve her virtues. Now, of course, here, it's a tribute to the lady, because it seems that the lady or his wife was full of virtues. She was, Elizabeth Polly, I think, his mother was Elizabeth, his wife was Elizabeth, and the queen was Elizabeth. So he wrote a poem in which he mentioned the three Elizabeth, Okay. My verse, your virtues rare shall eternize. I think, a woman like this should feel very gratified and very, grateful to a husband who thinks of this way, My verse, your virtues rare shall eternize, and in the heavens, ride, your glorious name. Look here, in the heaven, like, it's an assumption. In the heaven, write your glorious name. So how come? This is, a metonymy. A metonymy of what? Metonymy, metonymy. Metonymy, of what? Of his poetry. So what will be written in heaven? What is the thing that will go to heaven according to the Zabithian? It is poetry. Why? Because poetry is, inspired by the muse. See? Yes? What do you want to say?
I wanted to say that poetry is a heavenly art.
A heavenly art. On what?
Heavenly art that the poets were inspired by the goddess of inspiration, which is the muse.
Okay. Yes.
The same idea.
The same idea. So, like, because it is divine, so it should be written in heaven. And in the heaven write your glorious name. And then, like, I think we have to move, to the, the couplet, I think, by now, we're not going to be surprised by the couplet. Are we surprised by the couplet? Because, the poet told us, how he's going or what he's going to do. So, the couplet comes like what? So what is the value of the couplet here? Whereas death shall all the world subdue, our love shall live and later life renew. So what is the function of the couplet here? Like in Shakespeare, the couplet was, he was presenting a solution. So, and that was like Shakespeare, and we'll see that in the poems we are studying. But do you think here he's giving a solution?
Assertion.
So he is
Asserting
asserting,
that.
how he's asserting that?
It's like asserting that he will immortalize his
Yeah, but the assertion is happening here.
Yeah, but look, it's
Yeah, think what he's doing here. Why is it, what is happening in the final couplet? What is happening? Whereas death shall all the world subdue, our love shall live and later life renew. Wow, yes?
He's moving from the mundane existence to something more eternal. He's asserting also that the poetry and the verse is going to transcend everything.
I like the word transcend, because
everything
poetry.
that is pure.
Yeah, poetry has the power to transcend. Yeah, but I think this is clear here. My verse, your verse is, and he's going to write her name in heaven. See, it is here. So what is he doing here in the couplet? What is the function of the couplet?
You prove the sincerity.
Yes, I think, if you look at it closely, he reiterates. So he reiterates, says again, reiterates what he said earlier. He explicates, he explains, his decision in, the quatrain, whereas death shall all the world subdue, our love shall live, and later he's elaborating how he's going to write her name. So yeah, the couplet here is not very essential part like what we are going to see in Shakespeare, but it is ornamenting. It gives the shape of the sonnet, but as you see, he's elaborating, he's explaining. He doesn't surprise us by giving us the solution here. So whereas death shall all the world subdue, death here is capitalized. Why? It's capitalized. Death was the main concern of the Elizabethan. All of you still remember those who studied Hamlet.
Yeah.
To be or not to be. Not to be is to die. And nobody, came after death to tell us. So there was, they were panicking. They were, death was oh my God, it was a great power. And Shakespeare, other poets, Marlowe, all the Elizabethan were preoccupied by the idea of death. So I think capitalizing here, death is what? Is it a metaphor? Is it a personification or what? What's mean subdue, by the way? To subdue, control somebody. To subjugate somebody. Subdue. Subjugate, suppress. So whereas when death shall all the world subdue. What figure of speech is this? It is? It is? A personification. Thank you. It's a personification. So death is like, a person who tries to control, shall all the world subdue. Our love shall live. Our love shall live. So it's the only thing which will not be subdued. and later life renewed. Wow.
It's honoring
You know?
God.
So it is honoring.
Our love is
Later, you know, when our love transcends this, then, because we're talking about, you know, a life which is renewed, the inner life, you know, is a life which which keeps renewing, because it is like we're talking about immortality. Immortality, you know, the time of immortality is renewed. Why? Because it moves in a circle, you know? It is a cyclic. So it never ends. It never ends because it is, you know, it keeps renewing. Well, whereas death shall all the world subdue, our love shall live. Shall live. Again, he's vowing. Again, he is pledging. Our love shall live and later lie renewed. You know, of course, shall renew. You see? I think, you know, we should appreciate a poet who is making a poem like beautiful, you know. It's a sonnet, but again, it is not. Is that a sonnet?
Actually,
Okay. Yes, Amma, like you.
there's something.
What do you want to say about the sonnet? Like,
There's
you
something
have-
about the sonnet
go ahead.
and Spenser. Spenser made a new kind of verse, a new kind of sonnets, which is called after him Spenserian sonnet.
Wow, you know, we're
Yes.
talking about a poet who molded, you know, an English form of the sonnet.
Yes.
And this is, you know, something new.
He,
Good.
he merged the Shakespearean kind of sonnet with the Petrarchan. The Shakespeare in the sense that it is.
Do you want to say that he paved the way for Shakespeare?
No, he
Because-
merged the Shakespearean with the Petrarchan, so he made his new a whole new thing. Like it is Shakespeare in the sense that it's 3 quatrains and a couplet, but it is Petrarchan in the sense that he does not give the resolution and the end of the poem.
Shakespeare wasn't still.
Very good. So this is, you know, an interesting point. Like he merged the two, you know, the Petrarchan, and this is like something unique, you know, because like how you still keep to the tradition, you know, of the form, but you use the Petrarchan, but you change. This is a challenge, isn't it? But he was not as competent as Shakespeare, you know. I think he was ornamenting. You know, look here, you seem like to have said the rhyme is like what? A, B, A, B?
Yes, and that was common for most of his sonnets. A, B, A, B, B, C, B, C, C, D, C, D, E, E.
But for this particular sonnet, do you think that this rhyme A, B, B, C, B, C, you know, is it like, you know, suitable for, you know, the atmosphere of the poem, the movement of the waves or not?
Yes, it is very suitable. And it is some sort of smoothing the background of the argument that is some sort of here cruel, and then it goes cyclic, and then at the end it goes again cyclic, and it was very suitable for it.
Very good.
And there is something I wanted to say. But
I'm sorry,
obviously
you know.
I forgot.
Do you want to talk about like the spondee itself?
Yes, it goes all I am at the
Yeah.
end, unstressed, stressed, and then it is only here spondy, as you've said, because of the cruelty of the woman when she says a vain man to him, addressing him to his face, and that is.
So all the poem, you know, is written in iambic pentameter, and today I sent you a scansion of the poem. If you just like refer to my page, you know, I just like posted for you something, a link called, you know, written in, you know, this sonnet, and it is compared with Shakespeare. So you'll find that the poem is written in iambic pentameter. It is very musical. The only variation, as we said, this one, because it is, you know, she's a woman, like she's reacting, you know, or she's responding to his attempts. So she was trying to be more assertive, you know. So she was using the spondee. Do you want to add anything, Mike?
No, you've covered everything.
Okay, but let's like, I didn't cover everything, you know. I think, you know, we're waiting for their wonderful So what? What is the theme? What is the theme? What is the possible theme? Yeah? Mortality and immortality? You know? Yes?
A challenge of life.
A challenge, you know, like, okay, you have to be more specific. So the challenges of life, you mean?
Poetry itself. And
Poetry
the
itself?
function and the
The
significance
function of poetry?
of verse.
What else? Yes?
The dreadful impact of the death.
Yeah, the preoccupation of death and like how to challenge death.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this could be like what you said. All of what you said could be summarized in a very, common theme of the Elizabethan time, which was called Mutability Theme.
Yes.
Mutability Theme. Yeah, nothing was, mutability, like things were changing, and that was a concern. So most of the Elizabethan time was a prosperous age, it was an age of advance in every field of life, and, there was a concern about mutability, there was a concern about death. We'll see this, in the poem of Marlowe next time, Andrade, because next time we're going to discuss Marlowe Andrade, and I expect you to write a good response to Marlowe. So yes, it's a mutability theme. However, we can say it could be about, the immortality of verse. Could be about, yes, the immortality of verse itself, like Spenser's verse. And, here he wants to show that, his verse, he's celebrating his verse. He's celebrating himself. And as you see here, he is celebrating, an emergent Elizabethan value, which is the value of individualism. So here, you see, he's not submitting, he's not, giving in. He thinks he has something to share with. He, as an individual, he has a personal initiative. And this is like, this is a new value. This is an Elizabethan value. It is the value of individualism. So we see the poets are coming out saying, yeah, we have something to say. And this fits with the whole, epistemology of the time, which is humanism. I think it's a wonderful poem. Yes, Ala, what do you want to say?
Regarding the rhythm, I think it's maybe that starting with a stanza with the same rhyme that we in the previous stanza is like one aspect of the renewing. Maybe.
Very good. This is, an addition. Thank you, Ala. Because here we're talking about, like a connected link.
Yeah, between
so
the rhythm and the theme.
B, A, B, then B, C. So there is connection here, There is connection. So the whole line is connected like this. And this has to do with renewal. Okay, what a wonderful, idea. Yes,
Yeah,
Jan?
I feel like also because we said this is going to immortalize, and like for example, next generations are going to be reading about this. So I feel like the old generation is passing something to the new generation.
Exactly.
Yeah,
The
like,
same thing, yeah.
excellent. Wow, good. So I think we are making something of the rhyme here. So the rhyme fits very much, like the whole theme of the poem. Good. Do you have anything to add? So what you are supposed to do, I mean, you are the class, I give you like this, this the second. So what you have to do is like to go at home, like just try to read what I sent for you, and then you try to take notes and try to piece up together a nice critique, a nice critique of the poem. This is your responsibility. And next time we are supposed to start a new poet, Marlowe. And Marlowe, what is funny about Marlowe, like he's inviting somebody to go with him to the countryside.
Yeah.
We're going to have a new genre which is called pastoral poetry. So I want you to know what is pastoral poetry. And I want you to respond this time by poetry to come live with me and be my love.
Okay.
Say, no, Marlowe, I'm not coming with you. I'm a Muslim and I have, to respect you or whatever, You can do that. It's going to be funny. Thank you very much for your attention, and see you next time. Okay, bye.